Listen closely. What looks like distance is often devotion to truth. What feels like silence is frequently self-protection. And what you may mistake for coldness can be the most careful form of care. Today, we are not here to fix empaths or to force them closer. We are here to understand why some of the most sensitive souls choose to be unreachable, and why that choice can be an act of courage. Highly unreachable empaths feel everything. They sense moods before words are spoken. They carry rooms inside their nervous systems. Over time, this constant attunement teaches them a hard lesson. Closeness without safety costs too much. So they develop strange behaviors, not to punish others, but to preserve themselves. They may withdraw just when connection deepens, not because they don't care, but because intimacy awakens old alarms. Their bodies remember moments when openness led to overwhelmed betrayal, or responsibility that was never theirs to carry. Distance becomes a boundary, not a rejection. They often give more than they receive until one day they stop altogether. This isn't inconsistency, it's exhaustion finally finding its voice. When empathy has been used without reciprocity, the system shuts down to survive. They might speak with piercing clarity, then disappear. That honesty can feel abrupt, even harsh. But it's the result of long internal negotiations. They have learned that half-truths keep them trapped, while clean truth spoken once sets them free. They can seem self-reliant to the point of isolation. Yet beneath that independence is a deep wish, to be met without being managed, to be understood without being consumed. They are not unreachable because they lack love. They are unreachable because love without safety is not love. It's stress. Here is the quiet truth: these behaviors are not flaws. They are adaptations. They are the nervous system's intelligence responding to a world that asked for too much too early, for too long. So what do we do with this understanding? We stop shaming sensitivity. We stop demanding access as proof of care. We learn to offer presence without pressure, curiosity without control. And if you recognize yourself in these patterns, know this: you are not broken. You are wise in the language of survival. And now it's time to learn the language of safety. Distance is not detachment. It is self-respect learned through experience, repetition, and often pain. For highly sensitive people, stepping back is rarely impulsive. It is usually the final outcome of many moments where their openness was misunderstood, their availability was taken for granted, and their emotional labor went unseen. When an empath creates distance, it is not because they stopped caring. It is because they cared for too long without protection. What looks like withdrawal from the outside is often an internal decision to stop abandoning the self. Empaths are conditioned early to notice others before noticing themselves. They learn to scan faces, tones, and silences, adapting their behavior to keep harmony alive. Over time, this hyper-attunement becomes a habit, and then a burden. They become the ones who listen, who adjust, who soften the room. But when this role is not balanced with care and return, something vital erodes. Distance then becomes the only language left that says, I matter too. This distance is not cold, it is deliberate. It is a boundary drawn by a nervous system that has learned what happens when no boundary exists. Empaths often discover that saying no directly feels dangerous, especially if past honesty led to rejection or guilt. So instead of confrontation, they choose space. Instead of explaining endlessly, they step back quietly. Not to manipulate, not to punish, but to breathe again. Self-respect for an empath does not arrive loudly. It doesn't come with grand speeches or dramatic exits. It often arrives as silence after too much talking, absence after too much presence, stillness after constant emotional motion. This is the moment when the empath stops asking, how can I be easier for others? And starts asking, why have I been so hard on myself? Distance becomes a recalibration, a way to separate what belongs to them from what never did. When an empath steps away, they are reclaiming energy that was leaking through obligation, people-pleasing, and unspoken expectations. They are learning that compassion does not require self-erasure, that availability is not the same as worth, that being reachable at all times is not proof of love. Many mistake this shift as selfishness, but selfishness is taking without care. This is the opposite. This is choosing sustainability over burnout. This is understanding that empathy without limits turns into resentment, fatigue, and numbness. Distance is how empaths prevent their gift from turning into a wound. There is also grief in this distance. Grief for relationships that only worked when the empath overgave. Grief for versions of themselves who believed endurance was the same as loyalty. Creating space often means facing the uncomfortable truth that not everyone wants connection, some want access. And access without accountability is something empaths can no longer afford. This self-respect is not rigid, it is responsive. When safety appears, distance softens. When consistency is shown, walls lower naturally. But until then, the empath chooses themselves not out of fear, but out of clarity. They understand that protecting their inner world is not a failure of love, but an evolution of it. Distance, in this sense, is not an ending. It is a pause that restores alignment. It is the quiet declaration that care must include the self to remain real. It is the moment an empath stops shrinking to stay connected and realizes that the right connections will never require them to disappear. Sensitivity is not a flaw that needs correction. It is a strength forged through survival awareness and deep perception. Highly sensitive people do not simply feel more. They notice more. They register shifts in tone, micro-expressions, emotional undercurrents, and unspoken tensions long before they become visible to others. This heightened awareness is not accidental. It develops in environments where paying attention was necessary, where reading the room was a way to stay safe, connected, or needed. Over time, this sensitivity becomes finely tuned intelligence. It allows empaths to sense what others are avoiding, to recognize emotional truth beneath polished words, and to respond with depth rather than surface reactions. What many label as overthinking is often rapid pattern recognition. What gets dismissed as emotional fragility is in reality a nervous system that processes information thoroughly and deeply. This depth is not weakness, it is complexity. Survival plays a crucial role in shaping this sensitivity. Many empaths learned early that being attuned meant belonging, avoiding conflict, or maintaining peace. They adapted by becoming perceptive, responsive, and emotionally available. This adaptation kept them connected when disconnection felt dangerous. It trained them to understand others intuitively, sometimes at the expense of understanding themselves. Yet the skill itself remains powerful even when the cost becomes clear. Sensitivity also carries courage. It takes strength to remain open in a world that often rewards numbness. It takes resilience to keep feeling after disappointment, to keep caring after being misunderstood. Empaths do not harden easily, even when hurt. Their sensitivity allows them to access compassion, creativity, and insight that others struggle to reach. It fuels meaningful relationships, ethical leadership, and genuine healing. This strength, however, is frequently misread. When empaths withdraw, they are seen as inconsistent. When they hesitate, they are called indecisive. When they feel deeply, they are labeled dramatic. These judgments ignore the reality that sensitivity means processing more data at once. Empaths pause not because they are unsure, but because they are considering impact, consequence, and emotional truth all at the same time. Sensitivity trained by survival also creates discernment. Empaths learn when to speak and when to remain silent. They sense when something is off, even if they cannot immediately explain it. This intuition is not mystical. It is learned awareness sharpened through lived experience. It allows them to avoid harm, recognize authenticity, and navigate complexity with nuance. There is also exhaustion tied to this strength. Carrying constant awareness without acknowledgement can wear a person down. Yet even here, sensitivity teaches limits. When empaths reach fatigue, it is not failure, it is information. It signals the need for rest, boundaries, and environments where their depth is respected rather than exploited. Sensitivity does not mean being ruled by emotion. It means having access to emotional information and learning how to integrate it wisely. When supported, empaths become steady, grounded, and clear. Their decisions are informed not just by logic, but by human impact. Their presence creates spaces where others feel seen without being exposed. This strength is not meant to be suppressed or minimized. It is meant to be understood, protected, and directed. Sensitivity trained by survival evolves into sensitivity guided by choice. When empaths stop apologizing for their depth, they begin to use it intentionally, turning what once kept them safe into what allows them to lead, create, and connect with integrity. True connection is not created through urgency, pressure, or emotional demands. It is created through safety, consistency, and respect. Empaths do not close because they fear closeness. They close because closeness without safety overwhelms their nervous system. When connection feels rushed, invasive, or conditional, their body reads it as a threat, even if their mind wants intimacy. Safety for an empath is not an abstract idea. It is a felt experience. Safety means being allowed to move at their own pace without explanation. It means knowing that affection will not disappear if they pause, rest, or pull back briefly. Many empaths have learned that love can be withdrawn when they stop performing, giving, or accommodating. As a result, forced closeness activates old memories of responsibility, guilt, and emotional labor. Pressure does not draw them in, it pushes them further away. Empaths open when they feel emotionally unburdened, when they are not expected to regulate others' feelings, anticipate reactions, or carry unspoken tension. True connection begins when someone offers presence without demand, when silence is not interpreted as rejection, when boundaries are not challenged but respected. This creates a sense of safety that allows the empath's natural warmth to surface. Consistency is another pillar of safety. Not intensity, not grand gestures, but reliability. Empaths watch patterns more than promises. They notice who remains steady without needing constant reassurance. They trust those who do not punish them for honesty or vulnerability. Over time, consistency signals that connection does not require constant effort to maintain, that it can exist without emotional negotiation. Force, on the other hand, creates collapse. Emotional pushing, repeated questioning, and demands for clarity often feel invasive to empaths. Even well-intentioned pressure can overwhelm their internal system. They may comply outwardly while withdrawing inwardly, creating distance where closeness was desired. This is why forcing communication rarely brings true intimacy. It only produces compliance or retreat. Empaths also need emotional permission to be complex, to change their minds, to feel deeply one day and need space the next. Safe connection allows this fluidity without labeling it instability. When they are not boxed into expectations, they show up more fully and honestly. Their presence becomes richer because it is chosen, not coerced. Patience plays a crucial role. Empaths open in layers, not all at once. Each layer requires confirmation that it will be treated with care. When someone waits without resentment, listens without interrupting, and accepts without fixing, the empath's nervous system relaxes. In that relaxation, trust grows naturally. Safety also means emotional accountability. Empaths feel safest with people who take responsibility for their own emotions. When others can self-regulate, communicate clearly, and repair without blame, empaths no longer feel the need to manage or rescue. This allows connection to be mutual rather than draining. True connection does not demand constant availability. It allows space without fear. It understands that closeness deepens through respect, not urgency. When safety replaces force, empaths stop guarding themselves. They stop scanning for exit. They begin to offer what they naturally hold: depth, insight, care, and presence, freely rather than defensively. Connection built on safety is slower, quieter, and far more powerful. It does not rely on intensity to feel real. It does not collapse when challenged. It creates a foundation where empathy becomes a shared experience rather than a one-sided offering, where closeness is sustained not by pressure but by trust felt in the body, not just understood in the mind. Choose one brave step today. If you are an empath, practice letting one safe person see you, without over-explaining, without apologizing. If you love an empath, practice patience. Listen more than you ask, offer consistency instead of urgency. Create spaces where connection doesn't cost the self. Do not rush healing. Build safety. Do not demand closeness. Earn trust, and do not dim sensitivity. Protect it, and let it lead. Because when empaths no longer need to be unreachable, they don't just connect. They transform the rooms they enter.